AITAH for telling a friend I would never speak to them again and demanding an apology. Here we go Reddit. This one may hurt all those who read it. I, 44 meters, have been conflicted with how I left a friendship over 8 months ago with someone, 42 meters, I'd been friends with for the better half of a decade. We'll call this friend Alan. First off, to the younger readers, let me say how difficult it is to start, cultivate and maintain a new friendship into adulthood, so keep your good friends close and remind them what they mean to you as often as possible. Now to the beginning. In February 2016, I abandoned my comfortable single life to pursue a career with the entertainment industry over 3,000 miles away from my family and friends in Los Angeles. As an artist, in almost every aspect, I had faith I could find my tribe amongst the city of angles. I had 2 old college friends already living there, so I believed I'd be able to meet new people while still having a connection to my home and trusted comrades. I'd not found a place or job but had funds to hold me alone for at least 6 months. One of my buddies introduced me to Alan, who was from our hometown. He was living in a 2-car apartment and would perhaps offer me the spare room until another one of his friends, who was promised the space, in 6 months. 6 months of a cushion to find my own place. Awesome, thank you. We met and had tons of things in common. Both musicians, both actors, both looking to make a new life and find their teams to last the rest of their lives. I am introverted, so I don't like to go out much. Unfortunately, he is an alcoholic and often went out and continued to drink alone at home, often until the sun broke. It's his life, in his home. He can do what he wants. I fully understand addiction and dependency, and I'm not offering this as an excuse but some understanding for the situation. I lived with him for 6 months with no musical, writing or acting collaborations with anything further than me keeping the friendship alive. Honestly, I was trying to help him through his struggle with the source. After 6 months I moved out to a studio apartment. Soon I discovered while he was charging me $900 per mo, his total rent was $1,235 per mo, netting him almost $2,000 over the time I resided in his home. I saw it as a minor flag but was happy to be somewhere. One day, my friend and I were texted by Alan. He was in the hospital after a car accident, most likely, under the influence. My friend and I visited and took care of him. While there, he asked we sneak him in some whiskey. We visited him without fulfilling his request. After our mutual friend moved to New York, I wanted to keep this new friend in my life and didn't mind knowing I had paid for the convenience of a living situation so quickly. I found a catering job and referred Alan to apply. He was hired. After a year at my studio, I was able to move into Alan's complex. I now had my own 2-car apartment for only $1,250 per mo, almost next door to my new friend. Now, living so close, we worked Hollywood events while auditioning and trying to break into something good and saw each other often. But, besides carpooling, he rarely wanted to hang out. Things were normal until our mutual friend contacted me letting me know Alan was back in the hospital after another terrible car accident and multiple surgeries. He was bad. During these multiple hospital visits, nurses would bring him a can of Bud Light. He was prescribed beer. Time went on until one early Sunday morning, Alan called me from jail. He asked I pick him up 30 miles away. I confirmed the address and info and began my pre-dawn trek to retrieve him. After his release, within a minute of getting into my car, Alan asks if I'm mad at him. I say, no. He smirks and asks if I'm disappointed. Once again, I state, no. He then asks what I'm thinking about. I tell him that, off the top of my head, I could name 1,000 other things I'd rather be doing than picking him up from jail. First of which would be sleeping. Then I asked if he would agree, to which he did. After a shared sigh, he requested we stop by a liquor store. I explained I wasn't his father or parole officer, so I would not restrict his freedoms but would not want to consider myself an inebriator. So I complied with him knowing how I felt. January 2020, I got a new job, still in events catering, and brought Alan along with me. March, COVID-19 shut down the world. One night, Alan and I were hanging out, sharing drinks. I had concluded that I would focus on writing short stories and features as I had already written a horror trilogy I was proud of but hadn't sold. Alan was also an amateur writer. We were talking about what sells, and I brought up the obsession with anti-heroes, telling him I'd love to create a Breaking Bad type character. Alan says, I'd always wanted to write blank from the bad guy's POV. I quickly agreed and we spent the next few hours discussing the project. I pitched characters, arcs, scenarios, motivations and really thought it would work. I started writing it and asked Alan about completing it. He gave a nonchalant, sure. The night ended with Alan telling me he wanted to get sober, so I offered as much advice, support and whatever words of wisdom I had. During lockdown, I would text, call and even knock on Alan's door asking if he wanted to write the shared story. He declined and lived his life. I chose to focus my attention on a Western feature I had previously shelved. Time went on. One night, as I was on a roll typing away on my laptop, working on my own story, without notice, Alan swings through my unlocked door and claims he's being robbed. I immediately freak out and attempt to figure out what's going on. I put on a shirt and flip-flops, grab my pepper spray and a broomstick, following him upstairs to his unit. He slowly opens his door and I follow him in. Alan then tells me a man's hand came through his jacket on the arm of his couch and a woman crawled in through his second-story window. Knowing the impossibilities, I became confused and confirmed he was alone and nothing had happened. I actually got mad at him, yelling he had no right to barge into my home and didn't respect my privacy. I went home and called complaining to a friend about what had just happened. This friend quickly asked if Alan was detoxing. I said I wasn't sure. They explained that when detoxing from alcohol, oftentimes, people will hallucinate within 48 hours from their last drink. These can be vividly realistic and half of people who experience this return to the bottle just to quell the dream scenario and avoid, settle their delirium tremors. Now, I felt bad. I went to his door, knocked and joined him on his couch. He confirmed he was getting clean. I hugged him and said I would be there in any way for support. He said I saved his life. I explained there were no intruders, so, no, I didn't. He then said I saved him from his dependency by telling him, you only need 72 hours. Just spend 3 days in hell and you'll be out. If you don't make this decision, you will never be allowed to make your own decisions ever again. Do you want someone else to tell you when to sleep? When to eat? You know the answer. I was humbled, honored and proud. He did it. He went through hell and came out the other end with a leash on his beast. For many people, the pandemic shut down society for a few months. Not Los Angeles. We were shuttered for 18 months. A whole year and a half. FML. I wanted to get into shape at our local park but am really not a self-starter when it comes to physicality. So I would text, call and ask Alan. At the park, he would work out alone and preferred it that way, so I didn't push it. I would ask if he wanted to hang out, play music and yes, sometimes I asked if he wanted to get together and write the shared anti-hero story. He would say, no, and after a few months, maybe too many times of me asking about it, he told me it was his and asked I not write it as he was going to write it with his old college buddies. I was taken aback as I believed it was more my story as I pitched the whole thing as a digestible feature but only told him I hoped he was joking. He said no and I dropped it. I felt scorned but not burned. I moved to a new place, closer to my job further from Alan. There's a reason everybody in LA talks about traffic. Work returned to our city and now, I was only seeing him when we were scheduled on the same shifts. He was muscular and healthy. I, already overweight, packed on more COVID pounds and honestly, was jealous of Alan's ability to work out independently. If I couldn't self-start an exercise regimen, at least I knew I could begin anything creative on my own. With this reminder, I returned to the shared anti-hero story and decided to complete it by myself. Time went on and I finished the script and 2 rewrites. 114 pages done. Wow. Now, the title page. Written by Alan and me. It was, and I say, was, a fantastic story. I hadn't seen Alan in some time, so after I finished it, I reached out to him with no text replies or callbacks. Then last September, at work, I approached him with good news. I told him about the script and asked him to proofread and edit it. He replied with a stifled sarcastic, awesome, and walks away. I was confused but knew the conversation wasn't over. Within a minute, he returned to where I was with multiple other employees and immediately starts cussing at me. Fuck you, man. That's my fucking idea. You stole my intellectual property. You can't fucking take my fucking story, my IP, and then fucking tell me you did like it's your own. Fuck you. I replied with things like, are you serious? Why do you think I'm coming to you about it? Like I already sold it and cut you out. I'm not a thief and I won't allow you to call me that. He scoffed and left again. Co-workers were looking at me in confusion and all I could do was return a bewildered shaking head. He returned again with a lowered voice but, still cursing me out. He takes out his phone and shoves it in my face. Here, look. Notes from 2016, bad guy. I had that fucking idea 8 years ago. You fucking stole it from me. Knowing we were on the job, him not calming down and truly being hurt by his words and accusations, I whisper, no, fuck you. I'm no thief. We can talk later if you want, but I won't allow you to speak to me like that. I return to my work. The event is over and we are breaking down, preparing to leave for the night. I see him across the hall and open my arms. He approached, we hug and step into a private room away from working employees. I ask him if he won't read the whole thing to at least look at the title page. Hoping he would agree, this is where he would see even though he didn't write a word of it. I put his name as the first billed writer. He rolled his eyes and I felt he wasn't listening to me. I asked again, what do you think I would gain from telling you? Like I've already sold it and I'm rubbing it in. How do you think I felt when you told me you were gonna write it with some guys I'd never even met? Alan doubles down and once again, accused me of stealing his idea and calls me an asshole for doing so. This is where I snap and tell him how I felt about our one-sided friendship. I say, you apologize to me or you'll never speak to me again. Now I walk away. That night, I write him a text finally telling him his name was as co-writer and I wanted him to prove so we could make the best story and we would be partners, succeeding together. He replied with, I've read this text, I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you. I follow with, at this point, I don't care if you ignore me or not. It wouldn't be any different than the way you've treated this friendship since I've known you. You apologize or I'm done. Completely done. Then you tell people I didn't visit you in the hospital. I'm not really your friend. That I never helped you. Like I didn't get you work and pick you up from jail. I don't know if you were too drunk to remember all the times I was there for you. I'm not trying to pick on your addiction, I'm genuinely concerned you don't remember or hurt that you're intentionally lying about me. Silence. No reply, ever. The few times since we've worked together, he's attempted to say, hi, to me. I ignore the greeting and the only times we've talked has been me supplying a work request or event update. Just work and no more than a sentence at a time. He's bad-mouthed me at work and I've since noticed his co-workers do not give me much respect, not just as a supervisor but even as a person. A few nights after we fought, I deleted the script from my final draft. I didn't want something like that to be so toxic in my life. I would have felt his vitriol every time I read it. I'll only be working there for another few weeks as I've given up on this city and my dream to be a working artist. I'll be moving back to my hometown but really don't want to leave this city having burned a bridge. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for telling my friend I would never speak to them again and demanding an apology?